Start recording.
Okay, thank you.
Mathin ba agus fáilte go cynniuh Borsláinte na Gaeltach. Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Highland Health Board. Welcome to all board members, to members of the public and of the press who are accessing the meeting virtually today. And I'd like to notify you that the meeting is being recorded for future upload to our web, and to remind you also that you should use the show of hands facility to speak at the meeting rather than the chat function. And I'd also like to welcome to this meeting Kate Patience-Quake, who is Acting Director of Nursing, or Interim Director of Nursing. We'll be saying a little bit more about Heidi, who's looking very chipper today, towards the end of the meeting. Heidi. Apologies, Ruth.
Thank you, Boyd. Yes, we have apologies today from Bert Donald, from Joanne McCoy, and we also know that Louise Bussell won't be here with us today. Pam Kremen is substituting for Louise, and I'm also aware that Katrina Sinclair will need to leave sometime after 2:30 this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And with that, can we move on to declarations of conflicts of interest? Any declarations of conflicts? Alistair.
Yes, thank you and good morning, colleagues. I had considered making a declaration of interest in my capacity as a Highland councillor. However, looking at my connection to the items on the agenda and having applied the objective test, I feel I don't need to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Move on to item 3, the minute of the meeting of the previous meeting and the action plan therefrom. If we can just look at the minutes and go through them quickly. Are there any changes required in pages 1 and 2? Jean.
Yes, just to point out that I actually was present at the meeting, although it's recorded there that I had submitted apologies. So there was probably a mix-up because I'd been off the previous week with COVID. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jean will correct the record. Anything on 3 and 4, pages 3 and 4? 5 and 6? 7 and 8? And finally, page 9. If not, can we adopt these minutes as an accurate record of proceedings? Thank you. And turning now to the action plan. Are there any updates, Ruth, that we should note from the action plan? Some of this goes back quite a bit.
Thank you, Boyd. Yes, some of this does go back quite a bit, and you'll see from there the ones that are shaded out in grey, they are the ones which have been attended to over the recent past, and with the board's agreement we will be moving those off this list of actions still to be completed because they are now done. And if you just bear with me 2 ticks as I attend to find the papers in front of me and to locate that particular page. I think there are just a couple of items that are still on that particular action list still to be attended to.
Yeah, I think there are 3 altogether, and 2 are coming up at the November meeting or development session.
Thank you, that's right, yes. So strategic risk register in relation to the National Care Service, and update on babies born en route to hospital, and Chief Executive's report, an update on the National Treatment Centre. Those items are still to be attended to.
Heidi, suspect you want to come in on one of these?
Yes, if that's all right, please. So we have the provisional figures, and what they're showing is in terms of births en route to hospital. In the past year, we've seen 4 in North Highland, and we've seen 1 in Argyll and Bute. I just have somebody fairly critical on annual leave at the moment, and I just want to speak to them on their return just to make sure those figures are correct. If there is a difference or if there is any change to that, I'll put a note round to everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Heidi. Be useful just to get that information, I think, anyway, and maybe just the routes affected.
Yeah, happy
Alex.
to do that.
Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Boyd. Yeah, Heidi, just as well, if we can, to put it into context, do you also have the numbers of pregnant women that made those trips to Rigmore? So it's 4 out of how many?
Okay,
Which
yeah.
would be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do that, Alex. Thanks.
Okay, colleagues, are there any matters you wish to raise from the minutes? Don't see any hands going up, so we can move on now to a Chief Executive report. Invite Pam to address us. Good morning, Pam.
Good morning, and good morning, board members. I've got a few things I probably want to go through with you this morning, but I'll try not to take too long because we've got very important items on the main agenda. The first thing I want to do is quite sad, actually, in terms of paying tribute to 2 colleagues that we lost in NHS Highland in recent weeks. One was a home carer over in the Loch Aber area, Eileen Gow, and the other was one of our orthopaedic trauma nurses, Sally Folds, both in road traffic accidents. So, you know, really sad circumstances and really difficult for the teams involved, and equally and more so very difficult for their families and friends. So I felt it was really important for us to acknowledge that that's happened in recent weeks. There's been a number of road traffic accidents, as we know, in the Highlands, and very sad that we have lost 2 really dedicated and super members of staff to that. So condolences to their family, and just wanted to acknowledge on behalf of the board those tragic circumstances. So really difficult and very sad.
I think, Pam, I would like to write to the 2 families involved, express condolences on behalf of the board, if the board is in agreement with that.
I think that would be great. Thank you very much, Boyd. Okay, so moving on to probably more business matters. So the first thing I want to talk about is vaccinations. Clearly, we had some issues with our vaccination programme at the beginning, and those issues related to our communications piece through the national system. Board members will remember that we were unable to use the national system initially because it wasn't built for areas such as we've got remote and rural with multiple centres. It was built very much for a centralised model, and the government team have worked hard with us to try and rectify that, but it has been quite a tricky journey for them and for us. And if you just, in terms of tolerances, they did have only 6 to 8 weeks at the beginning of the vaccination programme to pull that IT system together, and have been working then from that basis ever since. So we are working very closely with them. On this occasion, we had issues in North Highland. 74,000 letters went out, and unfortunately about 1,800 in particular areas posed a problem where people got letters inviting them to travel quite long distances that, you know, didn't make sense in postcode. What I would say, and to be fair to our team and our staff, is that whilst it's an automated system, it does rely on significant levels of human diligence to check everything, which doesn't really fit that well with an automated system, but we are where we are. And that human error, or the filters not being set quite right, led to the errors in the letters with these kind of postcode anomalies. We have worked hard since then and have had a further piece of training and workshop and business analysts around this, so we are hopeful that we're in a much better place. I know Argyll and Bute generally have not had that issue, but again, they have had to put significant diligence around that. So there has been a dependency on, I guess, the human factor heightens the margin for error. So we are doing everything to try and put this right. But actually our performance is really good. If you look at it within the national context, the uptake and the performance is in line with our comparators, and we are making good progress in that. I probably just want to also mention that Argyll and Bute had a little bit of bad press around their programme recently in Helensburgh, and the suggestion was that that was an error from the team. What actually happened on those occasions was that we had significant numbers of drop-ins to an appointment-led clinic. Now the judgment there is, do you stick with this an appointment-led clinic, or do you accommodate the people that turned up, which were not in tens, they were in hundreds. And I'm pleased to say that the teams accommodated and responded to that and did phenomenal amounts of vaccinations on those days. So we have tried very hard to be flexible and responsive, and we are definitely moving in the right direction and getting it right more than we're getting it wrong. Unfortunately, when it doesn't go well, that is generally what hits the kind of headlines, and most importantly is the distressing part for individuals involved in that, and we absolutely want to avoid that. But our performance is good, we're making good progress, and as I say, we are very much in line with our comparators, and in some parts of Highland and Argyll and Bute ahead of the curve. So that is good, and we'll keep a really close watch on that. We haven't yet got the percentage uptakes, but that hopefully will come. But in numbers, we're looking good. If I move on to the National Treatment Centre, you will in the coming months have a stock take and a full report on that from Debs, and Debs is actually here if we need any questions at this point. But we thought it would be useful to give you an update on our progress with recruitment. So obviously we know, as with many services, recruitment is a big issue for us, it is nationally. And Debs and the team, with Fiona Hogg's team, have been on a quest to try and address the significant number of staff that we require for the NTC. I'm pleased to say that we are more than 50% successful in our recruitment, and in some areas that's nearly 100%, in some areas that's below the 50%, but overall we're on that journey sitting at around 52%. The risk areas for us are the theatre roles and anaesthetics, and there is significant work ongoing to try and mitigate those circumstances and to work with some of the central leads around how we might address some of those gaps that could be a problem for us. But nursing roles, the support roles are out now, and our orthopaedic surgeons, etc., have gone really well. So some great success, but we're not out of the weeds yet, would be my message. And Debs, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, just if I've missed anything.
No, Pam, you've covered pretty much where we are. We are making good progress. We'll continue to push in terms of the recruitment. And when I come to the board strategy session at the end of October, I'll be able to give a full and detailed account of where we are and where I think we'll land come the 3rd of April 2023.
And of course, we've had our Aim Highland branding down in the tubes in London, and also on the buses in Edinburgh, and we will also be able to report on how that's worked and whether the expansion of that is a sensible thing to do. But definitely we have been pursuing every route to recruit that we can, so that's good. The last thing I want to kind of talk about is, it's again, since our last board, as usual, a number of us have been out and about, and I myself have been in Argyll and Bute last week, Fort William, Caithness, and I go in Regmore regularly to different departments. And I think I just want again to pay tribute to the staff and the work that they do, the passion that comes through, the commitment that they make in what are often really, really difficult circumstances. And the pressures have not eased for us. Unscheduled care remains a huge challenge and a threat also to our scheduled care programme, and we are acutely aware of that and working with people to try and address that. Fiona Davies has agreed to take the lead on that programme of work, Pan Highland, and is having a gathering on Friday, and probably the first of many through the coming weeks to try and learn and get on top of where we're at. We still, in general, are performing well on the league table, if you like, of other boards. However, I think if you were in Rigmore in particular, it would not feel like that. And there are days when our performance is down quite a bit, and that's not a pleasant place for any clinician to be. And we need to find a way to turn that around. That equally links to the winter plan, which Catherine and is leading on in North Highland with the cross-system leadership team, and Fiona's plan is a little bit more advanced and actually out for consultation at the moment, but they will be learning from both systems. So just to give you that update and to say that you know, the kind of experience of meeting staff, and I'm sure it's the same for the rest of you that have been out, is it's just never ceases to amaze me in the face of what they're dealing with, just how dedicated they are, and we should be really proud of the staff that we have in working in these unprecedented and difficult times. Obviously, we've got two big items today that are really important for us to discuss: the strategy and the maternity, the situation with maternity. So obviously we'll get more into that when we come to those items, but those are my updates for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Can I invite members to ask any questions they may have about any of the topics that Pam covered there, or add any contributions regarding that or other topics? Don't see any hands up. It's very reassuring to know that there's been such good recruitment, Debs, to the NTC at this stage, with some time yet to go, and hopefully when we meet in strategy session, that you'll be able to update us on how the building works are progressing. Anything further, colleagues? No. Okay. Move on to our next topic, which is one that Pam referenced, the strategy, one of our big topics for today. It's been in gestation for a little while, and we're really pleased to see it come to this stage where we give it our final consideration as a board, and hopefully approval at the meeting today. So I'm going to invite Lorraine to speak to this very important piece of work, our 5-year strategy, Together We Care, with you, for you. Over to you, Lorraine.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Board. I'm delighted that today we've got the final draft of the strategy to present to you. As you're aware, we started this journey in September 2022 when I was newly in post. And when we set out with the aim of really engaging with our communities and our population and our workforce to listen to them and to take that into our future strategy. As you'll remember, we've presented to board at each board meeting on our progress. And so far to date, we have engaged with 500 community groups and third sector groups, ran 45 sessions of engagement, and received 1,700 responses, of which you'll see in the strategy. It was really set out to help shape our future, and through that journey we've worked, I guess, closely with our professional committees, but also all our workforce and teams to help shape that as we've went through it. Where we've got to is the final draft that you see presented to you today, with our Our 3 strategic objectives round about our population, our people and in partnership, and our 16 strategic ambitions that cover the life course of our population and have picked out certain areas that the population or our workforce said were really important. We've also acknowledged the Argyll and Bute strategic plan in there, and when I speak about the annual delivery plan later, you'll see that we've got areas of joint working that we've defined through that process. We've given our context in terms of the landscape that we work in the remote and rural, but also with our population and our people to set that out. So moving on to the strategic outcomes, we've embedded all of the quotes that we felt were really important to highlight that area, 3 outcomes for them, and a really important bit about what our population can do through that agreed NHS Inform. We've also embedded within there our performing well and progressing well. And these are all things that people said were important that underpin round about finance, quality, climate, health inequalities, so that we've got agreed action plans as well through our annual delivery plan for that. So I'm not going to go into slides today like I normally would do because I think the document speaks for itself. But I'm delighted to present it to you today and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. And can I invite colleagues to ask any questions or make any observations? I'll start with Gaynor, I think. Yeah, Gaynor.
Thank you. Just a comment to say that's looking really good, Lorraine. I know a huge amount of effort has gone into it, and it really shows in the end product. It's easy to read. There's not too much on the page, and it's really well set out. So I really hope that people will be able to pick this up and read it, and get something out of it. I know you've got other versions to come. I think a simple read version and a Gaelic language version. But I think the big thanks to the team who pulled it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaynor. Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Boyd. I think it's fabulous. I think it's really clear, really coherent. I can really see it motivating people and seeing a very positive future. Just to say that certainly within UHI, we've got a broad strategy now, which will be, unlike most universities, not separating our research from our education or enterprise activities. It'll be focused on a set of regional challenges and asking how can we use those in a combined strategic way. So what I'd love to do now is see just how can we align what we are going to be doing with your strategy to make sure we can support that as much as possible. So I've asked Professor Sarah Munoz to lead some work, which is talking to our partners on that. So the timing for us is fabulous on this. So Lorraine, perhaps we could touch base on that. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sure Lorraine would welcome that, and Pam, and we can come back to that later on. That would be, it would seem the right thing to do, to partner as closely as possible with our local university. Sarah.
Thank you. It's looking great, and it's lovely to see it. You know, we've obviously been tracking it through its journey as it's evolved, and it's really nice to see it come together in this. It's always lovely when it's all polished at the end and it looks lovely. So well done. And I actually just wanted to pull out a couple of points. I think Lorraine, you might have undersold us a little bit in the SFAR with regards to the engagement, and I just wanted to pick up on that because you've obviously explained about the extensive engagement that took place, which is fantastic. But I think what we maybe have missed a little bit there is there was also the sort of other engagement that we did in Argyll and Bute for the Argyll and Bute strategy. So actually, I think we've done even better than we've kind of talked about here, which I think is a really good thing, especially given, you know, what the time that we were working through those engagement processes. So I think a massive well done to all the team members that worked really hard on that while everything else was going on. And the other thing I was just going to ask is that when we, you know, Gaynor talked about kind of other versions of this, easy read and sort of summaries and stuff. I think what would also be helpful is maybe a link out to the full Argyll and Bute strategy. So it's great that we've got the 1-page Argyll and Bute summary in there, but as we know, that is also a hefty document, and it'd probably be handy if we could provide people with a link so that our population in Argyll and Bute can really see the detail of that as well, because obviously there will be so many things that are aligned in the two strategies, but it would be really good, I think, for people to understand the detail in Argyll and Bute and how this strategy is going to support delivery of the Argyll and Bute strategy down here. So that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Maybe invite Lorraine just to react to the comments made so far before I bring Anne in.
Yeah, thank you, Gaynor. The intention was that we got that easy read version, and we're also just, Ruth Fry and myself are looking at how do we animate this and make it really engaging, and then looking at some case studies really to bring our population into this moving forward. So, but we will do that, and Brian, absolutely happy to meet to discuss that alignment. I think we've got key areas that we can work on together that would be really powerful. No, absolutely, Sarah. Yeah, you're right. The engagement, I know you've got a lot of that covered within yours, but the link, how do we link that in? I'm happy to do that. That's a easy change in this version. Thank you.
Anne.
So I just wanted to make a small request, Lorraine. I know you the last thing you'll be wanting is anything added to this, but I just wanted to suggest something on a point of detail, and then sort of make a comment about the much bigger picture. And it's just in terms of the reference to the professional advisory committees at the end of the introductory section about the board. I think it might be useful if we could perhaps say a little bit more, or put in a diagram, or just, it just didn't feel quite right to me to have you know, just a very small reference to them in the context of the board as a whole, because clearly they are a key part of our governance structure in the context of what we want to achieve. So if there's time, or if not in the next version or whatever, but it was just a small thing that struck me. Because of course there's lots of things to really celebrate about the journey that you've been on and where we've got to, and I'm not going to repeat the plaudits you've already had, but you know, obviously I feel the same way about the document. But what I really wanted to reflect on was actually something from the SBAR, where it commented that this, I think it was something like, this is not this is a continuation of a direction, not a radical change. And interestingly, when I read this document, it does feel very different from anything that we've produced before. I think that there are elements of this, the emphasis that's given to health inequalities, the emphasis that's given to people in place, the emphasis that's given to managerially enabled clinical leadership. I actually think there is a lot in this document that could be very radical if we implement it in line with the vision that's set out here. And I think that's really, really important, actually, because when we think of the scale of the challenge that's facing us, when we think of the finance paper that we're going to talk about later, when we think about the challenge that faces colleagues such as Deb's in terms of the recruitment or the maternity issues we're going to talk about, I actually think radical is really what we need to be thinking about. But I suppose I do think it's in there, actually. And I think that's the spirit in which we need to approach the implementation of the document. So thank you very much to you and your team for all the work that's gone into it.
Thank you, Anne. And Pam?
Yeah, Anne's probably said a bit of what I was going to say in terms of, you know, the transformation that's needed and the translation of this direction of travel. And I do think the indicators are in there. And whilst these are kind of easy statements, they're very easy statements to make. They're much more difficult statements to enact and to take a system through. That's what it's going to have to be about. And so going back to the engagement, I think we, you know, have done well in our engagement. That's maybe not what everybody would think, and that's not maybe everybody's perspective. And so we need to continue to learn and grow around that, both in terms of how we work alongside our workforce and our professionals, but probably more so how we work with communities, because the bit that I'm really keen to see out of this as well is that the ideas and the expression of ideas, that we are creative in that space and that we road test our ideas with the people that have to experience them, so that we do get the best possible outcomes for people. And always within that, there's a lot to weigh up. Nothing's straightforward, as we know, but I think it gives us really good and clear direction. It does have some good indicators in there of change, but the kind of art will be in how we all come together to try and translate that and truly shift how we work, and not, you know, making the mistakes of, if we keep doing what we've always done, we'll get what we've always got. That's a statement used a lot, but actually translating that is difficult. And I think this gives us a great bedrock to move forward on. And certainly as someone who came in to the organisation during the pandemic, and the real anxiety whilst there was a big pandemic going on was that we actually had no strategy. It's fantastic that we've got to this space, and for everybody that's worked with Lorraine to deliver this, I think we have to thank them, because people have done this at a time, again, of extreme pressure.
Thank you, Pam. And before I bring Lorraine in to respond, I have Boyd and Graham. Boyd first.
Thanks, Boyd. Yes, on behalf of the clinical part of the organisation, I just wanted to note that this is something that they have been asking for a very long time. And while there have been previous iterations and documents that were giving direction, this has been very different in process and in product. Yes, there are many clinical people who have not been able to really get involved because they've been so busy with the clinical challenges that we've been having right through the past year while this has been developed. But I don't see anything in there in it that is wrong or that they could highly disagree with. And I think it'll be very welcomed, and indeed it helps set the tone now for where we're going in what could be another very challenging period. It also is good that it aligns with the annual delivery plan, aligns with it, and it aligns with government. So it's good for us inside NHS Highland, and it's good in how it connects to the other bits it needs to connect to. So I think it's very welcome. Like any strategy, it has to flex a bit because new challenges will come that we haven't imagined yet. And I believe it can do that as well. So I just wanted to put a word in for all the clinical staff in NHS Highland.
Thanks, Boyd. Graham?
Yes, a comment as much as any question. Just because a document's easy to read doesn't make it easy to actually implement. And I think, in fact, what it could do is actually make it easier to hold us to account, to make this thing as well implemented and executed as we can in the coming years. But I do think having it as easy to read is a great bonus to make it understandable across all levels of the community and organisation. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. And invite Lorraine to respond.
Thanks, everyone. I guess Anna put in the not the radical change, and I do see where you're coming from, but I wanted, I guess, it to be underpinned by all of the areas that we should be doing and move them forward. So some of the areas were not radical, but I'll take that into account. And certainly for the professional advisory committees, Katrina, I see you there. You're on our picture, so I'll make that that paragraph a wee bit bigger and check with you that you're happy with the word in there. But I think it does provide us, what Graham, you said, that framework now to hang everything on throughout our organisation. I'll go on to obviously speak about the annual delivery plan, but as we've heard previously, we've got our performance framework now, we've got our performance oversight board, and we've got all our programme boards established. So we've got that rigour within the organisation as well to drive this through the next 5 years. So, and I've been speaking to Ruth as well about how do we do that and align all our board papers to the strategy so that we've got that full flow coming through. So thank you for all your comments.
Thanks, Lorraine. Tim, I saw your hand up.
No, thanks, Boyd. Just a brief comment. I wasn't wanting to get in Lorraine's way. It's really to pick up on a bit on what Anne said, and to welcome some of the particular aspects of the strategy around areas that perhaps haven't had a great deal of focus in the past. I think the population focus and the life course focus for the strategy are very welcome, but also covering areas such as health inequalities and issues that sometimes don't get the attention perhaps that they should, and to pick out end of life as one of those. There's been a lot of work done in recent years in end of life with NHS Highland working with Highland Hospice and others, but still often end of life care tends to get a little bit marginalised. Important and vital though it is as a part of the life course and a part of services, and an area that uses a vast amount of resources and something that we need to get right. But all too often in strategic work, it gets pushed to one side, but that's not the case in this strategy, and end of life care is highlighted as it should be, as are many other areas. So I think it's important to welcome that.
Any further comments or contributions? I think this is a really defining moment for NHS Highland. I felt uneasy when I came into the organisation that we didn't have a strategy in place at that time, and I was very glad that Pam picked up the baton and we had a one-year strategy put in place very quickly, and that was the precursor to this much more substantial document, that not substantial in the sense of the number of pages it runs to, but in its substance. And I think that's an important point to make, that not only is the structure and the design and the format very attractive and importantly set out, but the substance is there too, as Boyd alluded to, in terms of clinical strategy as well, something that we had talked about for some time. I think Anne has made the point about the clouds of finance that surround us. It's quite a cloudy day here in Skye today, and we're going to be confronted by difficult conditions going forward in terms of finance. But it's so important that we have this holistic strategy which sets a direction for us as a board for the next 5 years. And I want to thank all who contributed to the formation of the strategy in our communities, amongst our people, our staff, and our stakeholders, but critically, of course, to Lorraine and those other members of staff who led on this and led on the consultation element of it. So I really welcome the way in which it's been commended by colleagues today, And I think it's important that we mark the occasion of the launch of the strategy, not just at a board meeting, but that we have a launch event, Lorraine, when the final document is ready for publication, that we have an event to launch this and to publicize it as well. Maybe get your view on that, Lorraine, before I draw this item to a close.
Yeah, I'd be delighted, and I'll work with Ruth Fry on that. I think once we get that video and that animation, that'll help, I guess, further get that promotion for it in a 2-minute video. So once we get that, I'd be delighted to get that organised. And I guess thanks to Elspeth Harrison and Davy Balfour, because they've been pivotal in this, as well as Ruth's team in the engagement phase. So they've been very important to me as we went through this journey.
Okay, colleagues, we're being asked to take substantial assurance from the strategy and to approve the new NHS Highland strategy. Together we care with you, for you. Kurum Kala, Lehtse Guchtse. I didn't ask Lorraine to pronounce that one. And to note the development of the strategy that's been used as a driver for the annual delivery plan, and that implementation has thus commenced already. So are we happy to proceed on that basis to adopt the strategy? Thumbs up all round. And thank you again, Lorraine. And the word alignment has been used already in regard to the document and how it aligns with the annual delivery plan, and that's very apparent in the annual delivery plan, but it's also apparent in the IPQR, and it'll become readily apparent in other aspects of our work as we go forward. So can we therefore move on to the annual delivery plan and defer the comfort break till near 11 possibly? If you're able to cope with that, Lorraine, 2 in succession. So can I ask you, Lorraine, just to speak to the annual delivery plan and its status?
Yes, thank you, Chair, again. So what you have in front of you today is our annual delivery plan that has been submitted to Scottish Government. In previous years, Scottish Government would have, I guess, authorised us for publication. They're not doing that this year. They have said it's our plan to align with our strategy, and it requires the approval of our board, and then we can go to publication. In June this year, they commissioned us to do an annual delivery plan. That annual delivery plan really focused on planned care, our workforce and social care. But for a board, I felt it important, as did the board, to include all aspects of our strategy and make this our year 1 implementation plan. So there were really important areas, and I'm not meaning to not mention things, but mental health, for example, was not an area that was commissioned by Scottish Government, but we felt it very important to include that, and were commended, I think, by Kevin Stewart earlier this week on including mental health within it. But there are a number of areas obviously aligned to our strategy, and we felt it important to cover all services. There have been a lot of areas during COVID that hadn't had a plan, so we felt that covering all services aligned to our strategy was important. During the development of this, we worked with all of the teams to develop what their plan should look like to align with the strategy over the next year, and how they could become involved in developing their key performance indicators and the actions that they would take, as I say, of year 1 of implementation. And we did that with all the teams through development sessions or working with individual areas. We also worked with the professional advisory committees and took it along with the strategy to work with them to get their views on it, and they were welcomed, I guess, in the direction that we were going. So I'd rather go to questions, Chair. You've got the document in front of you, and I'm happy to answer anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorraine. And colleagues, can I ask you to raise your hands if you have any questions or contributions you wish to make? Sarah.
Thanks. It was just a point of clarification for my own understanding. I can see really clearly how this aligns with our strategy, and that's great. And we've got in there the sort of section that talks about the two different integration models, including Argyll and Bute. But I just wanted to understand, how does this sit in relation to the ADP in Argyll and Bute? Because I know that we had to do in Argyll and Bute, the HSCP had to do our own ADP, and then we've got this one. How do they sort of fit together, the two pieces?
Lorraine.
So we've defined within the areas that we'll work together on, for example, mental health. And Fiona's here, she indicated that we would also like to work together on palliative and end-of-life care. So within that programme boards, we'll work together. Obviously, the Integration Joint Board and the Argyll and Bute have got their plan. So it's how we work in collaboration for the key areas that we've defined through the programme boards, Sarah. I'm happy to discuss with you that particular areas that we've done through the overview of the ADP. You're on mute, Chair.
First of the day, thanks, Lorraine. Just while I'm waiting for other colleagues to contribute, on page 87, Lorraine, you refer to this final draft annual delivery plan. Is it actually final draft, or is it the final plan?
It's final draft until we approve it today, Chair, and then we'll move it to being in final version.
So even although it's been submitted to the Scottish Government, it's still for us
yes.
to. Thanks for the clarification. Anne.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine. So I think one of the things that I was really pleased to see in this document was in various guises throughout it, the emphasis on integrating our approach to workforce performance and finance. There's several references to that in different ways throughout the document, and I think that's a really critical part of the performance framework that we've already agreed for the organisation. So I think that was a really significant development in our approach to I suppose implementation, which is what this is, isn't it? This is the implementation of the strategy. And so just picking up on Pam's comments earlier, that often it is the implementation of the approach that's the really tricky thing. I just wondered if any of our colleagues could elaborate a little bit on what taking a people and place approach actually means in practice for community health and care services. It's a phrase that's used quite a lot in our strategy and in this plan, and I think it would just be helpful to me if we could tease out a little bit more about what that actually means. If you can.
I think Pam is going to attempt to respond to that.
I am. It's something I'm quite passionate about, as Anne knows. I think we still are learning to define what we mean by that, if I was honest, which I am. I think we've got a lot of learning to do in this space, but for me, and I think, so I'm going to use the vaccinations as the example that I got a bit bent out of shape about at the beginning, and there's plenty in the room that know that. If we start with a people in place perspective, we'll probably not go very wrong, because we'll put first the people we're trying to serve, and we'll also understand what the kind of assets and the resiliences of the community in order to deliver the best outcomes and service. And I guess that relates to what I said about road testing our ideas, rather than a technical approach that just says A plus B equals C, and therefore we can deliver a programme, but it actually doesn't take account of the people in it. So I think in our geography, the size of Belgium with 36 islands, we absolutely cannot take any other way as we go forward. But I do think we still have a lot to do in learning how to work at a community level in a joined up way that's not where we're not threatened by the challenge that the community might bring to us. So I think we've made good progress, and I think there's not many things we don't talk about that we end up saying, if you take a people in place perspective to this, you'll actually get the right answer. Or even if it throws up risks and challenges, we're working through them from the right lens and not from a purely service-centred perspective, which is traditionally what has happened in the health service. As long as I've been in it, it's natural that we kind of default to how we can square away what is often a very difficult situation to the most, what seems like the most easy and technical way to respond. But I think I'm in no doubt that when you take a different approach, you get a different outcome. And the most recent one for me would be vaccinations. When we were planning that we really did well when we took people in place and galvanised and mobilised the efforts and strengths of the local community. That's my go at it.
Thanks, Pam. Gaynor.
Thank you, Lorraine. Really nice to see this. I really like how it fits with the strategy and the idea of it being our first kind of implementation year of the strategy. So I guess along with that, there's a number of outcomes and measures of success or targets that we're working towards. I wonder if you might be able to just give us a quick overview of how that will work through our governance systems, so that we as a board have oversight, can at some level scrutinise and seek assurance on how these are being delivered, and then the progress of that against our strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaynor. Lorraine.
Very topical, Gaynor. I was discussing it yesterday about how we mapped our KPIs to our governance committees through our programme boards. So onto our IPQR, which is, we're obviously still on that journey to get it fully aligned. So with each of the KPIs that we've got in the annual delivery plan, each of the programme managers are taking that at the moment and looking if it's a clinical and care governance aligned KPI, or is it a staff governance KPI that Fiona and I were discussing yesterday, or is it to go through the Financial Resources and Performance Committee? And there may be areas that they need dual reported because they've got significant challenges in each. So we're doing that piece of work at the moment. That will then culminate in, as we've discussed, having a quality dashboard that provides that overview to the organisation of the standards and other areas that I'll be linking closely with Kate and Boyd on, in terms of developing that quality framework for the organisation that supports clinical and care governance, and ultimately gets reported into the IPQR, which we'll discuss in a wee bit, about how do we align each of the areas with a quality, a performance, and ultimately a finance focus for going to each of the governance committees in the future. But that's work in progress, but you will see it by the November board meeting.
Thanks, Lorraine. Any further questions for Lorraine? David.
Yeah, thank you. Not a question for Lorraine, but maybe just add a little from what Lorraine was saying. we are developing then our performance framework, as Lorraine's described. The framework is in place, but obviously as we adapt to the new delivery plan that we are hopefully agreeing today, then we will embed those performance metrics into our operational reviews, as well as the reviews that take place within the board subcommittees. I would ask for the chairs of those subcommittees to work with the executive leads to make sure that the KPIs that are selected to be reported on actually do align with the strategy. So that verification for us would be very helpful, and your eyes around that would be most appreciated, just as we formulate that. With a little bit of patience if you can, just because some of these metrics are new for us, and we will need to develop our capability around that. So, but thank you in anticipation, and I know that we've already had feedback from some, so again, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Anne.
So I really welcome the fact that we've gone beyond the Scottish Government Commission and aligned this with our strategy instead of as well as the Commission, I should say. And you know, it really brings home the complexity, the breadth of activity within the organisation. I didn't see much talk of what we're not going to do or what we might stop doing. So I suppose my question is, what are the critical actions in this plan or elsewhere that will ensure that if we implement the plan, we'll be living within our means in accordance with our strategy?
Good.
Now there's a question for you before your coffee.
That's a showstopper, Anne. We'll give Lorraine and Pam maybe some time to digest that one and to come back with a response. But unless Jerry has the answer, or is it another question, Jerry?
No, thank you, Boyd. It's actually very similar to Anne's. Mine was roundabout. I really just, obviously, I really like this format. And I'm really pleased. I started off by thinking, oh, there's a delivery template behind this. I'd quite like to see that. And then I went, no, I don't, because it'll be full of all that stuff, but it's getting that sense. And I think it's tying in with what Annie said, is how will we know we're going along the journey at the pace we want to be going with, not the outcomes. I think the outcomes we will measure separately, but it's what targets are we setting ourselves there in terms of performance, in terms of delivery, beyond the treatment time guarantees and all of that, so that we actually say, yeah, we're making so we're moving through our progress in delivering the strategy, which will allow us to deliver the outcomes that we're planning for at the end of that delivery period. So it's very similar to Anne's, because obviously what's incumbent upon that is we can't do it all.
I suppose that point links with Gaynor's earlier point about governance as well going forward. Pam.
Yeah, so I think some of the things we've already talked about are the bedrock of how we do this. And part of that is also about the culture then of performance and how we perceive performance. And we've already been doing it. We've done a few tests. Lorraine and David have set up a few tests in terms of a new kind of approach, just as you described, Dan, taking the different points of the recipe for success, if you like, because if they don't all add up, you won't be successful. And so in understanding our business, we need to understand it in all of those kind of different areas. So the culture of performance, we're trying to help people understand that as a discovery journey as well as an accountability journey. And accountability is a positive thing. We should be an accountable system all the way through, right up to SG, in terms of achieving the best outcomes for our people. So that accountable system requires us to question each other and to challenge each other respectfully, so that we all have a coherent understanding of why we are where we are. So that performance journey, I think, is really important. The tone around it is going to be really important, but the learning in it for people who aren't used to working in that way, because some people won't be, will be significant in terms of how we collectively own our business. So we need to build up that confidence and capability, and we know that. And that's the journey we're on, and Lorraine and others have tried to frame this in a way that makes that helpful and gives us the suite of indicators that will help us understand our business, because only then can you make good decisions, only then can you prioritise, and only then can you really pull your business into what it needs to be, or negotiate if there are risks associated with where you need to pull back. And those are the discussions that we've been having around the application of this and then the response to that. So, for example, it's always useful to have an example, discussions of late about money. Where are we going to get the funding for all the unfunded posts? That the decisions that have been taken by different sectors. So how are we going to fund that? Well, the question back is, you know, are we using the money that's traditionally been used the way it has? Are we using it the right way? Are these the fundamental transformation posts that are really important? And therefore, what is the change there, or what's the prioritisation that we'll need to do collectively or in service to square that away? So those are the live conversations that we are trying to develop. But I would say we're developing capability of an accountable system in a way that I don't think has been quite so structured before. And we hope that as colleagues go through that and learn, they will gain confidence and not see performance as a stick, but as a tool to ensure that you are able to do your job well and make good decisions. So that's the journey we're on, and that's what the conversations we're having at the moment, that hopefully will translate in the way we need it to, because we do have to live within our means, or to have a strong negotiating position if that there are risks in that for us.
Thanks, Pam. David?
Pam has mentioned some of the things that I was going to mention in terms of the flavour of that, but maybe just to add, if you look at the detail and the content of the ADP, you see there's a substantial amount of work to be done. It's not something that can be managed from a top-down point of view with direction given on every item, but actually this is about empowering teams to be able to take responsibility for the areas that they have. We've got the framework now that's been set out in terms of what we're planning to achieve, but how we achieve it is going to be the critical factor. So the programme boards that we have set up have got very much cross-functional representation and leadership within them. And they're there to look at the combination of quantity, quality, and resources as they look to deliver and design services that would meet the outcomes that are required. So again, the success of being able to deliver against the delivery plan will be based on the success of the programme boards and the teams that contribute into those. And obviously the governance process is there that we can provide assistance and escalation where appropriate. But really the opportunity is for all of our clinical teams and care teams to be directly involved in delivering this. And the questions that we face as a board are the same questions that we need our teams to face too, about how that we can deliver with the resources challenges that we have, but with an expectation and an ask of a population that we'd ask that care is not only maintained but improved. So those are the challenges that we have, but we do believe we've got the governance process in place that can allow this, and we will learn and adjust as we go.
Thank you, David. Are there any further contributions before I return to Lorraine to respond to the points that have been raised? Okay, I don't see any hands. Lorraine?
Thank you, Chair. No, I've no real further comments. I think it was done in collaboration with clinical colleagues leading with our management teams, with our services on the ground. So it does feel real to them, and they are all immersing themselves in developing that. But it does, as Pam said, provide that framework for some of that decisions that will need to be made about how we move through this year when we have a tricky financial situation. Transformation will be key in all of this to get that financial position right, but also the right for our population, and that's what it really focuses on. And just finally, it has brought teams together who would not naturally come together because of the way the strategy is written. So focusing on our children and young people with our council colleagues, our public health colleagues, and our service colleagues took some challenges in the beginning to bring that together. But I think we've now got to the right position and they understand all the areas of action and key performance that they need to work together on for us to achieve the strategy in 5 years' time. So thank you for all the comments today. And
thank you, Lorraine. So essentially what we have here is an outworking of the strategy for the first year of its implementation. Usually a strategy is followed by or accompanied by an implementation plan, and here we have it, and it's multifaceted and very challenging in many aspects to achieve, but we have to set our goals and aims high. Obviously, will be impacted in terms of funding and how much can be achieved and when. In terms of our decision making today, we're being asked to take substantial assurance from the report and to note it, the annual delivery plan, and to agree that this final draft that's been presented to us, that we can take that assurance from it because of the approach that has been taken in creating it. So, colleagues, are you content with that? Yeah, you are. Okay. And we're running incredibly ahead of schedule this morning. So I think I propose that we just take a break just now, ahead of schedule, and aim to return at 5 to 11.